right, so I went through a couple different titles for this sermon. Zechariah 9. Don't look it up yet. Well, you can if you want. I'm going to get to it at the very end, so it's just going to be there just to make you a little hungry for where I'm going to go. Zechariah, see, you shouldn't have done it. You moved too fast. Zechariah 12, 9. All right, that's where we're going to end up. Okay, raise your hand if you've ever hoped for something. I mean, right now you're hoping that you'll raise your hand, right? No, but raise your hand if you're currently hoping for something. Raise your hand if you've ever hoped for something, but it didn't happen. All right. So, as Pastor Jim mentioned, I once was with Reinhard Bonnke doing some ministry things for a few years. And one of the things I've been recently is getting back to that. So I love hearing different people speak. There's something about people like Billy Graham, Reinhard Bonnke, just powerful, evangelistic, uplifting, very inspirational speaking. That is all gospel-centered. And so I love listening to him. And so this was a sermon. I knew the Lord was going to talk to me about hope. And so for a long time I've been listening to him because there's just so much hope in the gospel. One of the things that Reinhard Bonnke says when he talks about his faith and his hope for things, he says that our problem is we ask God for the possible. God is a God of the impossible. And so we, probably everyone collectively here watching online, a lot of times that is our problem. So we tend to, you know what, let's make that not a problem. Let's hope for big things. Let's hope for the impossible. Let us put our hope in these powerful things that are beyond our control, because we know that God is a God of hope. Because he's a God of hope, Romans 15:13. We know that he says that not only is he a God of hope, we're made in his image, right? And then we're supposed to overflow with hope. We see Romans 15:13, it's the same thing. Jeremiah 29:11, one of our favorite verses. He says that, so I know the plans I have for you, plans to give you a future and a hope. He gives us not just a practical, functional future, but a hope. So he gives us hope. And you know what? I did not know this until recently. He says everything written in the past was written to teach us, so that through endurance taught in the scriptures and encouragement they provide, so that we might have hope. Romans 15:4. So the scripture, the Bible, is written so we would have hope. Are there other things as well? Yes, this is a sermon on hope. Let's talk about hope. It was written so you have hope. He is the King of hope. He is the living hope. It says that love, God is love, and part of love is, it always hopes. You are called to one hope. You're called to hope. Do you get this hope? Hope, 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 hope. I hope you get it. So hope, 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 right? And this one, I don't know where Nate is. If you just double check, maybe just make sure everything's good with the thing. One of the interesting things is Hebrews 11:1, right? Faith is the substance of things hoped for. Faith is the substance of things hoped for. So that means faith and hope are directly tied together. Faith is the substance, so if faith is the substance of things hoped for. So hope precedes, or at least is right in line with faith. Hope's a big deal, right? So here we have a couple magnets. These are just some things that we have around the house, mostly on the refrigerator, and they represent certain things that we hope for. Just as an example, we got a Disney castle there. We've got a crusade. This is a ministry, Christ for All Nations. We have another guy, David Urson, Making Jesus Known Ministries. A couple different ministries that we pray for, we hope for. And then we have, this is an envelope so that we can put money in, so we can do certain things. And then we have a picture of one of our sponsors, one of the children we sponsor down in Honduras. These are just some things that I was hoping for. But actually something I'm really hoping for right now is a new job. I'm hoping hoping for a new job. So, about a year ago, we decided to hope. Can you get both me and this?
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm going to be over here.
Okay.
So a little while, about a year, well, so for a while we've been hoping for in a new job. We've been hoping in a new job for quite some time. But recently, about a year ago, I'd say we really kicked it up a notch. So over the past year, we've really been ratcheting up the hope in the new job, and not just any new job. We were starting to be picky. For the first time in my life, I started rejecting offers. I've never rejected a job offer to my extent. So there's just a whole new realm for me. Hope in this new job. That's there's certain check boxes we feel we need to get checked. And so we're kind of shooting a little outside. So if there's a circle of reasonable prayers, I'd say this is probably on the edge. I don't want to say it's like crazy, but I want to say it's definitely on the edge of kind of outside the scope of what a typical jump would be from where I am. So we're really hoping in that. So when Pastor Jim spoke and shared that last month that I was supposed to speak today, May 29th, and since I knew it was going to be on hope, and since I've been hoping in this new job for so long, I just figured, all right, this month's going to be the breakthrough, right? I would definitely see what I hoped in come to pass this month, probably in 2 weeks, right? So I can get the job offer. So by the time that I'm giving the sermon, I say, and tomorrow or Tuesday when we go back to work, I'm going into the new office with that new job that I hoped in, that God came through, right? It's a triumphant sermon about how I would get like multiple offers and expectations, because it wasn't me. I just held on to my hope. And I saw God do over and above anything I could imagine, because I was just faithful in doing my part. And God just opened the door wide, and I saw all these things happen, and that's not where I am. So God had a different sermon to talk about. So let's back up just a little bit. So if you're hoping for something, your actions should reflect that you're hoping for it. True hoping in for something, when you truly hope in something, your actions should reflect it. So if you're hoping in a child, right? So you get a woman who has learned that she's pregnant. Now she's hoping in that child. As it comes to pass, she's going to do a lot of different things. She's going to read books. She's going to talk to all her friends. So you're going to start making the room nice. You're going to buy different things, right? There's a lot of things that go in with an expectant hope. The best type of hope is the expectant one. So you start taking steps as if it's going to happen. She's not making the baby pop out of her tummy, but she is taking steps for when that baby arrives. So we have some hopes as well. So like I mentioned, these are some magnets. So some hopes at some point in the future, Pastor Jim, way, way in the future, so no stress right now. I really want to move somewhere warm. So we have a picture of the Disney castle, just as our hope. We have there's a lot of things within ministry that we desire to do, and they're pretty big things. So we have magnets of Reinhard Bonnke's ministry, Daniel Kalenda's ministry, my buddy David Urson. So we follow them, or we communicate with them, or we give to them, whatever that looks like. So these are just representing different areas of hope. And then we put that hope into action when we do things like, this is our Honduras fund, right? So there's a guy, Tom Stammen, I will promote him pretty much every time. He's one of the most amazing ministers I've ever met, who does this type of work. Pastor Jim's one of the most amazing people I've ever met as well. Yeah, right, let's squeeze it in there. Everyone here is some of the most amazing people I've ever met. But in regards to doing ministry with orphanages, Pastor Tom Stammen is just, I could speak for days about how incredible the ministry that God's working through him is. And so, not only do we have Jonathan, our sponsor, but we are saving up money to go down to Honduras one day. Now, it's not a lot, and none of this is I'm not saying any of this to boast, but we're just doing a little bit. Whenever we have a little bit extra, we try to put into these different things that we have hope for, whether it's a ministry or whether it's a desire of our hearts or whatever that looks like. So we try to take the steps as that expectant hope to do these things. So that's every once in a while we plop things in. Now the thing about Jonathan, he is an incredible young man. I am absolutely in love with him, and we've never met him, but he means so much to us, and we've never met him. But aside from who he is and his value. He represents something to us that I feel had to happen. So a while ago, so we've been supporting Tom off and on. Here and there we give. But I never felt comfortable doing anything committed because I felt like the budget never worked. The budget never works for us. The numbers never work. I don't know if you've ever been in that stage of your life when the numbers don't work. You need X amount, budget doesn't have X amount, somehow God provides every time. So God is providing manna, God is providing through people, God is providing, literally, for the past 3 years, the budget has never balanced, I don't think, since maybe a little after Ember was born. And so for me to commit to something above, we don't have a budget for it. But we committed to this. And it's not a lot. Guys, it's not a lot. This is not to toot my own horn. I actually sometimes get upset because it's such a low amount. I'm like, we're giving just that much? Part of me is almost I don't want to say shameful, but I'm like, sheesh, that's nothing. The way that these people live and the amount that we give. But the fact that it's consistent and the fact that it's monthly shows me that whether we have the budget or not, God somehow allows us to overflow. And into these things, because we hope for these things. We hope to be able to bless others. We hope to be able to do the ministries. We hope to go to Honduras. We hope to, be part of the orphanages or the ministries or whatever it looks like, right, with your life. So all these things that we're hoping for, Jonathan just it's a hope that we're going to be able to do more one day. There's a lot of scripture talks about a lot of things you can do if you have more resources. So we hope for a lot of those things. But until we get there, we're still going to do what we can do with what we have. And Jonathan represents doing a little bit over that. And somehow, we're not in the red. It makes zero sense to me. I have no clue at all. But God is providing. So that's what Jonathan represents, is God constantly providing, not just for us, but even just a little bit more, and I'm believing that that's going to keep going. So, back to that job. So we picked a sort of one job. Well, it kind of fell in our laps. And I could give you a whole 10, 20 minutes on how we truly believe this was from God. From who we found out about it, the exact timing we found out about it, the exact timing of the interview, all the ins, all the outs, everything that just felt like God, God, God. And then all the work, on all the resumes and interviews and just everything you could imagine. So what would happen is I feel like I would do everything I could for this specific job, and then I felt like the Lord would give me some creative spurt. It wouldn't happen, and God would give me a creative spurt. I'd do something different, something more, and then create it. And I literally, I can't even begin. There's no way that was just creativity out the wazoo of who to talk to or who to get in front of. And then I literally emailed the CEO of this company. I started following their stocks so I could follow think of what was reasonable. I was probably way beyond reasonable. I really wanted this job. But every time I had a new idea, a new opportunity wouldn't happen. So when I hoped in that new opportunity or new idea, then I would get disappointed. Then I would hope in a new idea, and it wouldn't happen. I would hope in a new offer, but then it wasn't a good offer. And then I would hope in this. So hope and rejection. Hope and rejection. You would hope in these things, but after the failures, you start to condition your mind. And so instead of me having this idea, and it was exciting, I'm going to have this new hope, this new idea, I started getting mad. I got mad at new ideas. I got mad at new messages. I got mad at new opportunities to apply for. I started being upset. I don't want them because I know if I go that route, I'm going to get disappointed. We've been there, right? Sometimes with prayer. Things that we're petitioning for, things that we're going for, things that we're hoping in. We hope in these things, and they don't work out, and then you just start to get mad. Why do I even bother praying? Why do I even bother doing this? Because I know the outcome. It's literally a recipe for disappointment. That's our thoughts, right? And then when other people start succeeding, I started to get bitter. Again, I can't speak for you, but I can say I was genuinely, I was bitter when they were succeeding. I said, God, one of the things I'm hoping is going to happen. And I'm pretty sure I'm doing way more than they're doing. Can we be honest? Right? Lord, I go to church more than them. Lord, I read your word a lot. Lord, people especially outside of the kingdom who get things, right? Mm-hmm. What, them? Me? I'm struggling here and they just got the Lamborghini or whatever. What? So my mood would be affected. My definition of success would be affected. And then I would fluctuate. Things in my life fluctuate. All these things would fluctuate like a wave. And I just noticed as I got I would get hope, and then it would lose, and I would hope, and it was really tossed about like the waves of the sea. So I say that because this is hard to preach on when you're still hoping in something and it's not happening. You're still hoping in something, and you're supposed to encourage other people to hope, but you yourself are discouraged, or feeling discouraged at least. Whether the moment of discouragement and then encouragement, and discouragement and encouragement, right? You're hoping in and then you feel hopeless. You hope in and then you feel hopeless. But I think that was his plan, because I feel like with me, I often resonate more, and sermons like this are delivered differently and they hit differently in different ways. And sometimes you need to hear that triumphant, I'm on the other side. I'm on the other side of that great expectation, that thing I hoped in, and it came to pass. Now I'm encouraging you because it happened to me, it happened to you. And sometimes it's, no, you know what, it still hasn't happened to me, but God is showing me all this crazy stuff in between. And that's what I'm going to share with you. Because maybe you can relate more with the person who's in the hoping, they're hoping in, they're not getting it, than the person who's on the other side. It's like, well, it's easy for you to be hopeful and tell me to be hopeful. You just got that promotion. I'm not there, so you can't just tell me that it's not going to fix everything. Sometimes we get a little sassy with preachers. I know I've yelled at Stephen Furtick a couple times. It's like, listen, right? Or we hear these pastors and we're like, oh, come on, yeah, easy for you to say. Right? You're on the other side. You could even think that way about these greats that we hear in the Bible. It's how easy for you to write that. But I felt like what the Lord was showing me in this, it was foreign hope. It was that I wasn't thinking it right. I wasn't putting my mind right. I wasn't processing it right. I was putting my hope in things incorrectly. And so instead of it being hoping in these things, the Lord, I felt, showed me it was hoping for things and only hoping in Him. So, foreign hope, get rid of a little bit here. You're either hoping for something or you're hoping in something. And so when we had those things at the beginning that I asked you, what are you hoping in? Though I tried to have a specific way of phrasing this, because it had to be a specific way, because I was hoping in things. I wasn't hoping for them, I was hoping in them. And that was where my issue was. And so what the Lord showed me is when there's a thing or a what, you hope for it. I'm not saying it's wrong. You hope for it. That's actually the plan. But when you're hoping in, the only thing should be the who, which is God. And I specifically tried to phrase it that way, and I hope I said it the right way when I was speaking, because this is really important. And as I was writing this sermon, what was so interesting is many times when I was trying to say I was hoping in this, I was hoping in this, it kept trying to correct me and say, did you mean hope for? So the Google document was trying to remind me, weren't you supposed to be hoping for that, not in that? Because of grammar and because of other things. But I believe spiritually, we hope for the what, we hope in the who. So there's a story. There was a scientist named Kurt Richer, and he did an experiment with rats that would not be allowed today. And I do not advise this at all, because if it were to be done today, PETA would be all over it. It is not nice. It is cruel. But he did this experiment, and it's fascinating, about rats in a bucket. Some of you may have known this story. So Kurt Richer had two groups, actually several groups of rats. We'll just kind of go with two groups of rats. And he had a bucket of water. And so he ran an experiment of hope. He put them both in the buckets of water. And so he'd take the first group. We'll just focus on the first group. The first group he put in the buckets of water. And they would swim for about 2 minutes until they were exhausted. Once they were exhausted, they drowned. That's why I'm saying this is not something that would be done today, so I'm not condoning it. But the next group of rats, he put in the bucket. He waited until they got tired. They were almost going to drown, but he took his hand and he saved them for that 2 minutes. He did it again. He let them recover, and then he started the experiment again. What he discovered is when they were placed back into the water, they swam for much longer than they had the first time. The only thing that changed was they'd been saved before, so they had hope to be saved again. See, the first time they were hoping in their own ability to swim, and that was it. And their own ability, they knew at some point they were going to, and so they just gave up. But when they stopped hoping in their own strength, they started hoping in the hand that would save them, it actually made what they were hoping for, a good swim, in them, and it actually made their swim even better. It says that after giving them the right thing to hope in, the rats did not die anymore, and they fought for their life. And through that hope, that them not hoping in their swimming anymore, but hoping in the hand, they performed what they were hoping for way more impressively, way more amazing. So it says, and there are a little bit conflicting results on this, but the absolute lowest amount that I could find of how long these rats swim, remember they used to drown after 2 minutes with no hope. The lowest estimate that I found, and I'm sure there are others, 36 hours. The high that I read, 60 hours. So it's the same thing with us. When we are given hope, the right hope to hope in the hand, it wasn't about our backstroke, it wasn't about our front stroke, it wasn't about we're hoping for good swimming technique and all that, but we hope in Him, our swim gets better. Is that crazy? When we hope in the right thing, we'll see, and ultimately it will come to pass what we hope in. So like I said, there's nothing wrong with hoping for these things. There's nothing wrong. In fact, we're encouraged to hope for these things. There's tons of verses about it. But when we hope, we only hope in the Lord. That is it is exclusive. We hope in the Lord. Psalm 147:11 talks about we put our hope in His unfailing love. 1 Timothy 4:10 says our hope is in the living God. Isaiah 40:31, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength, and they will soar on me. Why would hoping renew our strength? Well, this just proves there's something in us that when we hope in, right, the Lord, the right thing, what we hope for often comes to pass, though it might look a little different. Hebrews 6:19 is a verse on hope. It basically talks about Jesus being the anchor, right? He's our hope, and because of that, we're firm and secure. And I think that's an amazing analogy, because Jesus as an anchor thinks, okay, so if He's anchoring us, what does an anchor do to a boat? Well, when there's a storm and it's rocking, it stops the sway a little bit. That when the boat wants to drift and go where it shouldn't go, it stops it from drifting. So Him being a reliable and stable anchor allows us to function correctly, allows us to have hope for other things, allows us to do all the stuff that He's called us to, allows us to live, allows us so many things. But if you were to trust in an anchor, anchors are huge and heavy. There are some anchors where just one chain, one link in a chain, and they have thousands of links. It's 500 pounds. These things are hundreds of tons. They're so massive, and they're so strong, and they're so sturdy. The Lord is beyond any of that, and He is what we're anchored to. Imagine if you put your hope in the wrong thing. Well, then you're going to get tossed about. It's not going to snag. It's not going to keep you down. It's not going to help in the storm. In fact, when the storm happens, you're going up and down, right, with the waves. And so that's what happened to me. When I hoped in it, whatever I hoped in, my mood was connected to. Whatever I hoped in, my success, my definition of success was connected to. When I hoped in, the waves all affected me. But if I simply hoped for those things, and He was my anchor, well, He helped me keep calm. Well, He helped me understand that there's things higher. He helped me correct my perspective on what the success really is, what really matters. He calmed the waves, or at least was with me through it, keeping me anchored in it. So part of this is thinking differently. When we have our hope in Him, I have a couple practical examples of how it affected me. And so I'm going to share them with you, and then I'm going to give you some final words. So when we hope in Him, it actually takes a little bit of a weight off. Because sometimes when we hope in these things, we're actually hoping in our ability to do these things. There's this whole mentality that this is super important. So, and we also mismatch, right, success in all these definitions. So, for example, the other day, my son came out to me, I was working, and I couldn't pick him up. I couldn't pick him up in that moment, and Marie said, Caleb feels rejected. He started crying. And so I thought about that. Of course, later I come and I hold him and stuff, and I realized that in that moment, he wasn't rejected. I just didn't do something for him that he wanted in that moment. I would never reject him. He is my son, no matter what. I would never reject my son, and I am his father, right? So I, as his father, will never reject him as my son. But maybe in moments, he's not going to get what he's asking for. Same reason as us, in Christ, in our relationship with God, we're never rejected by Him. We take it as rejection, right? So we put our hope in what God is doing or not doing, and then, which is different from putting your hope in Him. And that's where, like, us as Christians kind of get a little off, because we have to hope in Him exclusively and alone. But absolutely hope for those things. You need to hope for those things. And you must hope for those things. We're called to pray, and prayer is hope. We're called to love, and love is hope. Right? You would even know we're His disciples by how we love one another, and part of love is hoping for one another, so we hope for. Hope is insanely, incredibly important, but we hope for all these things, because, listen, our theology is not 100%, none of us. We don't actually know what's going to happen or not. Our faith is in the gospel, in the elementary teachings, in Him, and we hope for everything else, because we do not know exactly what He's going to do, but we hope for these things and boldly ask for them. We boldly ask for them. So it's not to say you can't hope for things, you are, but your hope must exclusively be in the who. Otherwise, we're going to feel rejected from God, and our mood is going to be affected, and our definition of success is going to be affected, and then we're going to have all these questions that we don't need to have. And what's interesting is when we put our hope in these things, our mind, we have to fight our flesh, because sometimes we start kind of gravitating to things that feel helpless or rejection when they really shouldn't be at all. I remember there was an example where I got a letter of rejection from a job, and I was all pouty about it, and Marie was like, "You weren't going to take that anyway." So my flesh, my Joshua, normal Joshua, not thinking heavenly, put my hope in something I didn't even care for. Honestly, I wasn't going to take. Just for the fact of, like, I was so used to. I was training myself to be helpless. I was training myself to be discouraged because I was thinking that way. But God has done us to renew our mind. And so the same thing, those rats learned hopelessness. You can hopefulness. You can learn hopelessness. And that's a whole nother story. But just be careful that when you're doing these things, you're not gravitating to these areas, and you're keeping your perspective right. I mean, gosh, you can go on and on with that. One of the things that not hoping in Christ, if you hope in Christ, you're able to be happy for others. So, for example, I mentioned there was somebody else who got a job. If you want to get the real details on that one, somebody with no experience, no degree, completely new to the field, started in a building next to me for more money than I am making now. And I have been with the company for 5 years with a degree. And so at first, I'm not going to lie, I was mad. I was like livid. And I was like, so I took a moment, and I clocked out, and I walked outside just to breathe and cry out to God, like, God, like, And you could go on for all these reasons. I was like, and I'm supposed to preach on hope. This was last time. I'm supposed to preach on hope. How am I supposed to preach on hope when I feel so discouraged? And what I felt like he did was he redirected my hope to be in these jobs and in these things, to be hoping in him. And he says, well, let's just think a little differently. I did that for him. I could do that for you. Isn't that what you're asking for too? Something sort of outside of the scope of reason. It's like right on the edge. Isn't that what he got? Kind of right on the edge? Isn't that what you're wanting, sir? You seeing his success should give you hope. But instead, you chose hopelessness because you were teaching yourself hopelessness and you were stewing in all these things and you were feeling pouty about it. And he wasn't doing this he wasn't judging me, right? He was saying it very loving. I'm just sharing it with you like this. He was very loving of, I can do that for him. It's just, and I feel like God brought me up all these verses about not complaining. He brought me to the story of the vine owner who had people and he decided to pay them all the same, even though some of them were only there for a very little amount of time and some were there all day, and how gracious he is. And so, and on that note, with the idea of having the right perspective, right, and the right mentality, because all these things are also important. When we put our hope in him, it's much easier. It makes it easy. It doesn't make everything easy. It's not always easy. This is actually a hard sermon. I didn't actually really want to give it. I wanted to give the triumphant one. Hey, like if you just stick with it, it's all going to happen. But this was what the reality of what I'm learning is. And so part of that is I called my buddy, and there's a verse, one of my favorite verses in Psalm 100, it says, enter his gates with thanksgiving. And so that's something, whenever I start my prayers, all that stuff, I try to do that, because you enter his gates. That's the start, the starting point. It's the gates. So to open the gates is thanksgiving. You'd be thankful, you'd be grateful, right? So what he said was, if you enter God's gates being thankful, whose gates do you think you enter when you're being ungrateful, unthankful, complaining? So God doesn't say that to puff himself up or whatever, because he needs things. He doesn't. It's for us. So we stay where we need to stay, and our thoughts where they need to stay. And we be where we need to go. And the last example was God rerouting and God redirecting us. So there was a specific job I wanted. And this was the one that I did all the stuff I mentioned before, and then I hoped in doing more things, and then I got rejected, and hoping in, and then more and more and more. And I could tell you so many reasons that was from God. I mean, I was fully convinced, this is it. This is it. This is the job. This is it. We've been there? This is it. I could say all the verses. I could say all the confirmations. I had so many things. And then I get reached out to on Friday, just before this message, Friday, and somebody that was connected to the job basically said, if you didn't get a message from now, you don't have this job. Is there anything else you want to play? So I got rejected from that job that I thought fully was it. That was it. Now God could still do stuff. But I was, now it's the same thing, right? All right, God, like, what? I'm supposed to preach on hope. I'm supposed to have this triumphant, hopeful thing. At least say, hey, you know what? I got an interview tomorrow. I can have something to give them. I got nothing to give you guys. I've heard back from nobody. I mean, I haven't heard anything. You know what I mean? Like, I've gotten here and there, but like, I have nothing concrete to say, okay, well, next week I start, or next week's the interview with it. Like, I don't really have any of that to share with you. But right after that, I went out, I cried out to the Lord, and I was like, okay, well, that's the direction we're going to go with this sermon. You're going to teach me this versus hoping in some things versus hoping for things. And so I said, okay, and I came to terms with that. I started to have peace about that a little bit. And then somebody called me about a new job that is sort of better than that first one. And now I had nobody call me. It's always me reaching out 100 times. And what I think that was is I'm not saying like that's the job. And I think God was trying to show, hey, I'm not necessarily giving you a job. I'm giving you hope. And what I was happy for was not that I got that guy to reach out to me and I have a new opportunity. What I was happy for was that God is a God of hope, and He gave me an opportunity to hope. I could either be discouraged or be hopeful, and I chose to be hopeful, and I can't even describe like how I felt. Not because of the job, but because I was hoping in Him and realized who He is, and I knew that He wouldn't let me go, and He hasn't let me go yet, and He's given me an opportunity. Hey, these people reached out, just as something to hope for. And as I'm hoping in Him, I'm hoping for these things. And with that perspective, I feel like it literally is like changing my life. Hoping for things. Hope for things. Everybody, hope for things. But only hope in Him. So, I think we look at hope. Hoping for something. This is a flower that my daughter Ember gave us. It was about a month ago. It's a little flower. She picked it, and we put it in a jar. Can you see that? Kind of gross, huh? You can pass that around if you want. It's okay, it won't bite you. I mean, it might, but... So I felt like the Lord was showing me that hope, I used to think hope was like a flower, right? It grows and you water it or whatever, and it'll take care of itself, and then you'll see the harvest, right? We talked about that. Hashtag plant dad. But I felt like He showed me hope, when we're hoping for things, it would be more like this, like a yard. So we're staying at my brother-in-law's house, and so I went around his house and picked a whole bunch of different things from his garden and around his house. So thanks, Mike, for your sermon illustration. So a lot of different types of flowers, a lot of different types of bushes. There's a mushroom in there. There's a whole bunch. I mean, it's beautiful. Look at all these different things that were in the yard. So what I feel like God was showing me was we like to attribute hoping in the flower. But we should really be hoping in the lawn, the ground. Do you want me to hold you? Do you hope that I hold you? All right. Okay, sure. Be quiet. Okay, you can't touch my shirt. So, when we're hoping in the flower, we're almost always going to be disappointed. We can't hope in that flower. But if we hope in the ground, we may or may not get that flower. We may or may not get several flowers. We may or may not get a mushroom. When we hope in the ground, that's where everything comes from. That's where the nutrients are. That's where the resources are. That's where it grows from. Everything else can grow. And we're not stuck on just the flower. We could see many things, beautiful things, wonderful things happen, not just the one. So my issue is I keep hoping in the one thing when I should be hoping where everything comes from. So when I see the flower and it died, I don't need to be sad, because there's another one. Because it's not about the flower, it's about the ground. I may plant the seed, God plants the seed, there's seeds, and then God will cause some to grow and some to die, some seasonal, some perennial, some just for one season, some for multiple seasons, some that will live for thousands of years, some that are sealed up and they're eternal, right? There are actually plants that they don't have an age for, that they think have no end date, assuming situations don't get crazy, they could literally live forever. And so, the final words here are, whether I'm hoping for the job and whether it happens or not, whether we're hoping for these things, whether they happen or not, whether you're hoping for things and they happen or not, when hope for them, it's okay because I'm only hoping in Him, and He's the only one where my anchor is. That we set our hope exclusively in Him. And as we hope in Him, our mood, our success, and even the waves, doesn't matter if they're big or small or non-existent, we're able to track with Him, right? As I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. He doesn't always take us out of it. Sometimes He does, though. And hope for that. Hope for that. Don't be bleak. God is a God of good gifts. Gifts, guys. Gifts and grace. We don't deserve things, right? Mercy. Things that we do deserve we don't get. So absolutely hope for things. Hope for your desires. Hope for the things that you want. Hope for a new job. Like, hope for a new car. Like, I'm not saying go crazy. You can hope for anything you want, as long as you're hoping in Him, and God will redirect, right? Like the jobs. He might redirect to a different one. He might say, hey, listen, I don't need you to hope for that. Or, hey, maybe your motives are wrong. But as long as your hope is in Him, all that will get taken care of. So you pray and you hope for whatever you're hoping for. We hope for healings. We hope for all these things. We hope for salvations. We hope for all these things. But Christian words, right? We hope for all these Christian things. But we only hope in Him. So if it doesn't, we're affected much less. Because our anchor is secure. So remember that Zechariah 12:9 that I mentioned? So the Israelites were in a precarious place. They were in a rough place. They were in a dangerous place. They had all these negative things. I mean, Zechariah, just go into the chapters and where they were. Rough situations. And what the Lord said was, return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. And I thought, wow, I need to be a prisoner of hope. I risk being a little too optimistic. I will risk that. Being a prisoner of the opposite. But I want to be a prisoner of hope. A prisoner of hope in Him. Chain myself to the one only exclusive hope, being Christ. And so whatever I'm hoping for, whether it happens or not, I'm still stable with Him as the anchor. And so, Lord, help us be prisoners of hope. Help us be prisoners of hope. As you pour hope into us, as you are hope, let it overflow out of us. Let us hope for one another. Let us hope for the things of your kingdom. Let us hope to see miracles and your word and your governance and your wisdom with the leaders. Let us hope for seeing healings. Let us hope for seeing people saved. Let us hope for the new jobs. Let us hope for whatever, the cars or whatever we think we need. Let us hope for them. But Lord, as we hope, let our hope only be exclusively in you. Let us exclusively hope in you. And Lord, help us be humble to reroute when we're hoping for the wrong thing. Let us be humble to pull back if we're hoping for the wrong thing. And let us be bold to hope for those things that you are going to do. And let us be bold as lions to request and just come to your throne for these things. Let us continue to hope for all the things that you have for us, all the things that you have for our friends, all the things that you have for this church, all the things that you have for the leaders, all the things that you have for the United States, all the things that you have. Lord, let us hope for all these things, all the things that we desire. Let us hope for all those things. But Lord, above all things, let us hope in you. Help us hope in you. In the mighty, powerful name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.